Okay, guys. Hi, welcome to this webinar. So, we're just going to get started right now. So, firstly, what we want to start with is understanding what we are going to achieve with this webinar. But the whole objective of this webinar is right now, most of us are feeling like this scared kitten. We have a lot of ideas to contribute, a lot of things to contribute, but the only thing that is stopping us is our mindset. We don't know how to get there. We know that we want to become this brave lion while speaking on stage, but we don't know how to get there. And that is what I will help you do in this webinar. So, that is a simple objective to go from here to here. Let's move on. So, first, let's understand a few key things. What can you expect with this webinar? So, first, I want you to see the problems because sometimes, actually, most times in life, what happens is we don't notice the problems itself. And just because we don't notice the problems, it feels like, oh, everything's perfect. But once we see and we understand that these are the problems we are facing and we relate with it, then it becomes much easier to solve these problems, right? So that is something we'll be looking at. After that, we will learn an action-oriented solution. So I am not here to just give you a lot of knowledge, a lot of information. If you want that, you can go to YouTube, you can easily find that. The objective here is to give you something actionable, something you can do today to help you create and build a better tomorrow. So that is the main objective. After that, we will learn some awesome frameworks. Now, these frameworks can be in hooks, storytelling, and other stuff like that, which I'll be sharing with you soon. And these frameworks are such that you can take any topic in the world, and you can just copy paste these frameworks and they work every time. These are proven frameworks. I've tried it on my clients and they have found it very easy to follow. So these are very easy to follow frameworks that I'll be sharing with you. And lastly, we'll have live Q&A as well as a free gift for you. So let's begin. So let's first understand the common problems that one might face. Because without understanding these problems, we can't really find the solutions, right? So the first problem we want to deal with is judgment. Because I have heard a lot of my clients come to me, and the biggest problem they come to me with is that they feel judged all the time. And because of this judgment, no matter how good their idea is, they always feel uncomfortable sharing it in front of a crowd. And that is what we are here to solve. After that, we'll be getting into the voice, because without the voice, you can't do anything. So I have a question for you. Do you use your voice or do you play with your voice? Because when it comes to public speaking, you have to play with your voice. You have to explore the highs, you have to explore the lows. It's like an instrument. You play an instrument, right? You don't use an instrument. Just like that, we have an instrument right inside here, but we ignore that instrument. So I will teach you how to play this instrument. Then we'll deal with nervousness, because many people, in fact everybody, when they go to stage, they face some sort of nervousness, some sort of anxiety. Because anxiety comes because of anticipation. So when you're just waiting for your presentation and you're just getting ready and there's this silence, you're just in your head, that anxiety builds up. So everyone gets anxious, but it's how you deal with that nervousness is what separates the good speakers from the poor speakers. Because people who don't deal with that nervousness, they go on stage, they start shaking like this, maybe their words aren't coming out, and it's a nightmare. So that is something we'll fix, because we have to understand how to get rid of this nervousness. After that, we'll go to fluency. Now, a lot of you also face problems with your English communication. And no matter what you do, no matter how many newspapers you read, no matter how many books you read, nothing seems to work, right? So I'll give you some actionable steps to do, where within 6 months of consistently following this, you will see differences with your fluency and your communication. So that is something we'll look at. And after that, we'll go to body language, because without body language, our presentations are useless. So if I speak like this, without moving my hand or without any facial expression like this, hi guys, so today I will be conducting the webinar, you have already fallen asleep. So we will learn how to effectively project body language And we'll also learn how to read body language, because those two things go hand in hand. Imagine if I could tell you that you could read someone's mind just by observing their body language. Wouldn't that be fascinating? So that is something we'll look into as well. After that, we will get into engaging the audience, because without engaging the audience, your audience will automatically fall asleep. Because the sad reality is that the attention span of an average adult these days is less than a goldfish, which is around 8 seconds. So imagine your attention span is as low as a goldfish's attention span. And the thing about goldfish is that it forgets everything every 10 seconds. It has short-term memory. It doesn't even have a long-term memory. So yeah, we will understand how to engage the audience and make our presentations appropriate for this generation. Because what worked 30 years ago or 20 years ago does not work now. Right now we have different technology, we have different ways of addressing people, and we also have different levels of acceptance. Like before, maybe 20 years ago, you would see a PPT was just a white screen with some ugly text written in it that looked like a textbook. But that is no more the case, because nobody understands those kind of PPTs. So that is something we'll look into. Okay. So I want to begin by asking you, who is this person? Does anyone know who this is? You can type in the chat. If you don't know, it's okay. Okay, so let me tell you who this person is. This person is a very famous author, but unfortunately, before he even realized that his work was considered one of the greats, he passed away. He spent his whole life believing that his work was not good enough. He is Franz Kafka. And the reason this happened was because during his childhood, his father kept telling him that your work is useless, you don't know how to write, this is just a waste of time. And he internalized that. He started believing that if he put his work out there, the world would judge him. And they would judge him so bad that it would kill him from inside. So he never ever shared his work with anyone except for his friend. I remember this famous story is there. Kafka goes to his best friend and says, "Look, when I die, I want you to burn these. I've written these, I don't think they are good enough, they're complete trash, I've burned a lot of it, I want you to burn these as well." But the friend, after Kafka passed away, he actually went through these works, he read them. And what he found was, these were astounding. They were amazing observations, so well written compared to Shakespeare. Many people compare Kafka's pain to Shakespeare, but unfortunately, he never realized it. Because all his life, he felt that everyone is going to judge him, so he never took his work and showed it to the world. So his friend publishes these books, and today, these are bestsellers. The entire world admires him. But unfortunately, nobody even knew about his existence while he was alive. So when it comes to speaking, you have to get your ideas out there. Otherwise, you will pass away and no one would remember you, even if you have something great to contribute to the conversation. Now let's see an entirely opposite personality of Kafka, which is this gentleman right here. So this man is John Callahan. Now John Callahan is a comic artist who is paralyzed. And the ironic thing about this is that in his comics, he makes jokes about the disabled. He makes a lot of borderline offensive jokes. So one great thing he says is, you either love my work or you absolutely hate it. There is no in between. So this man spent his entire life where everyone judged him. He got many angry letters saying that, hey, these are horrible. How dare you write this? How can you make fun of the disabled? But nobody knew that this man himself was disabled. So he was someone who was never afraid of judgment. And that is why he is remembered in the books of history as a very talented comic. And some of his jokes are actually really funny, because what makes comedy hilarious is how bold it is, how unexpected it is. So I really want you guys to check out some of his work. If you just Google John Callahan's comics, you will find a lot of variety there. It's hilarious. So I really love that. So when it comes to judgment, you want to ask these three things. So, firstly, you want to ask what are their certificates. So, when you have something to say, when you have maybe a presentation to give, or you are an expert in some field, and you think the audience is going to judge you, you should ask what are their certificates? Have they put in the hours that I have? Do they know as much about the topic? Or are they someone on a very high level that they can judge me? And more likely than not, they are here to listen to you because you are the expert here. So ask them this question and it'll change your entire mindset. You will realize that these people aren't the people I should be afraid of. These are not the people whose opinion matters to me. If I were presenting in front of an expert who knows way more than me, then maybe I should feel like, okay, that person might judge me. But when you're presenting in front of an audience, most likely those people don't know as much. That's why they're here to listen to your opinion. So that's what matters. Then you want to think of this thing called doors of perception. So, what are doors of perception? Doors of perception are basically that whenever you're addressing a crowd, let me give you an example. Let's imagine that this popular movie, Avengers Endgame. So, you went, you're a big Marvel fan, you saw that, and you absolutely loved it. And when Iron Man said that I am Iron Man and snapped, you cried, you were in tears. But your friend, who is a DC fan, he has never watched a Marvel movie in his entire life. He has zero significance, and when he hears that line, it's just a normal dialogue to him. He doesn't go into tears, he doesn't really even listen carefully. For him, it's just another superhero movie. Now, let's imagine there's another guy who is from the village. He has never ever seen a superhero movie, and this is his first time. So for him, all he will take away from that is that there are fighting scenes happening, and yeah, these alien creatures are killing each other, and it was a bad movie, he would say. But you, who's a Marvel fan, knows that wow, so many years of storytelling have come together, and finally they have really connected. They've connected all the dots. So there's a lot of significance for that movie. So whenever you're talking about an idea, you will not meet people where you are at. You will only meet people where they are at. Suppose their mindset is lower than yours, then they will only understand that part. They will only grasp a part of it. So sometimes when you think that the audience is not resonating with your ideas, you have to remember that you are at this level and they are here. So the only way they can understand what you are saying is if you simplify it, if you open that door for them so that they can directly climb up to that level. Because you have made those mistakes, you understand the problems they have faced. So that's why you should open that door so that they can perceive at your level. That is something called doors of perception. Now, the final question is, does it really matter? When it comes to judgment, does it actually matter what people think? Because tomorrow, if maybe it's your last day on earth and you're leaving the planet, would you be thinking about, oh, this audience guy, he really hated my speech, he really hated my presentation? No, right? You have one life. So it's better to just speak out your mind, let everyone know your ideas, than think of, oh, what is going to happen? Are people really going to think bad about me? Because people always recover. They may have some perception about you, but perceptions can be easily manipulated and easily changed. So don't waste your time being someone like Franz Kafka. Be someone like John Callahan, who is fearless. So that is all I have to say about judgment. Now let's move on. Now let's deal with the topic of nervousness. So why are we nervous? There are three things that I want to cover here. So the first thing is something called imposter syndrome. Now over here you'll see Batman and Joker's picture and you'll be like, hey Sumit, why is this relevant here? Why have you put this? Batman is the most confident guy I know. But think about this. He has the most imposter syndrome as well, right? Because he doesn't have any superpowers. His only superpower is that he is filthy rich. So that is the only thing he has. So when he removes that mask, he also thinks that, hey, am I a good superhero? What really makes me one of the greatest superheroes? Am I even a match compared to Superman? So he also has imposter syndrome. And when you're an expert, you will also have that same feeling. You will think about your questions. You'll be like, hey, Am I really qualified to talk about this? Even sometimes I think that, hey, am I actually a good public speaking coach? So that is what creates that nervousness, because you're thinking, am I qualified? And that's when you're like, maybe I'm not. And that's what makes you even more anxious. So that is one thing that you have to focus on. The only way to get rid of imposter syndrome is by remembering your past experiences. So my past experiences as a coach is that I've worked with many clients, I have taught at colleges, I have spoken on stage many times. So when I remember those things, I'm like, okay, I have done this, so why can't I do this? And that really helps me get rid of imposter syndrome. Then comes comfort. So when you're presenting, it's not about confidence. It's never about confidence. No matter how confident you look, it doesn't matter. It's all about comfort. How comfortable are you while speaking? If you're not comfortable, if you're shaking, if you're like, oh my God, how do I do this? Then that's horrible. Now, when you're speaking to your friends, you're not going to shiver, right? You're going to tell whatever you want. Maybe you might even swear at them and not even care about that. So that's because you're comfortable there. So once you get comfortable with your audience, that's when the authentic self comes out. How do you get comfortable? Before your presentations, maybe you could talk to a few people and you could get to know them at least on a surface level. So that really helps you get that confidence, become more comfortable. And when you're presenting, you can see those familiar faces. And that really helps out. One more thing is that you need to get out that adrenaline. So before presenting, something happens. It's called the fight or flight response. And because of that fight or flight response, your body is like, okay, I'm either in danger, I'm going to fight this person, or I'm going to run away from there. And most likely people feel like running away because you can't fight a whole mob, right? A whole crowd of people. So that's why you get intimidated. And when that adrenaline is there, you start shaking. You start shaking a lot. Your voice starts cracking. You don't know what is going on. It's like someone is controlling your body. It's not you. So how do you get rid of this adrenaline? By two things. First thing you can do is you can definitely do some jumping jacks, brisk walks, all behind stage. That is one thing that really helps a lot of people, because exercise is a great way to get that excess of energy out of there, so that when you're on stage, you just have as much energy as you require, not excess. And also don't drink coffee before your presentations, otherwise that becomes a nightmare. Then the second thing you can do is breathing exercises. So one good breathing exercise I can give you is something called the 6-second breathing exercise. So over here, you will inhale for 6 seconds, hold the breath for 6 seconds, and then exhale for 6 seconds. And I want you to do this at least 6 times. So when you do this, you're really in that moment and you feel calmer. And this is really scientifically backed, so it really helps you out. And one more thing is, before your presentations, don't have silence. Or before your client meetings, don't have silence in the room. People say that, oh, silence will help me focus. But all it's doing is it's actually making you feel more anxious because of imposter syndrome. So I suggest have some music. One thing I like to do is I have my favorite perfume. I spray a little bit on my hand. And that smell, I start associating that smell with confidence. So like that, you would also have things that you can associate with confidence. Maybe it could be a particular shirt that you really like and that really makes you feel like, wow, I'm such a hero. I look so handsome. Something like that, small things like that make the biggest difference when it comes to nervousness. Okay, let's move ahead. Now, let's talk a bit about the voice. I told you, right? Your voice is an instrument, so don't use it. Rather, you need to play that instrument. So, when it comes to the voice, you have to understand a few things. There are 4 types of voices. One is your creaky voice, where some people talk like this. And when you talk like this, it almost seems like you're vomiting, but it almost feels like you're sick, right? And if you talk on stage like that, people will be like, oh my God, who is this person? Should I call an ambulance? But you have to realize that this happens. And there are clients I've worked with who have had a creaky voice. Then there is the chest voice. So the chest voice comes from here. If you want to understand if you're speaking with your chest voice, put your hand on your chest. You should feel some vibrations. If you're feeling vibrations, good job. This is a highly energetic voice, and this is something you should use in your presentations. Then there is your high pitch voice. So when I'm speaking like this is my high pitch voice. And believe it or not, some of my clients actually talk like this. They think this is their normal voice, which is high pitch. And after that, the fourth voice, which nobody obviously talks in, but it is a voice, which is your falsetto, which is much higher. So this is like a fake voice. So the reason this is a fake voice is because you have to go fully high and it's not sustainable. So now the question is, hey Sumit, what voice should I use to even present? Now the voice you should use to present is very easy. You need a mix of your chest voice and your head voice. So once you mix both of them, then comes energy. So you won't see me just talking in one voice just like this. Even if I'm talking in my chest voice, it looks like I'm yelling, right? So instead of doing that, I'm going high, I'm also going low. So that creates that variation. You see waves over here? Voice is all about waves. So until those waves are there, your voice is energetic. Now let's talk a bit about building the voice. Because the voice is not something that's constant, we observed earlier. Voice is something you can easily build. And how do we build this voice? Well, there are a few exercises that I'm going to give you. The first exercise is you want to really spread your body, and I want you to say aye 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 ah aye 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 ah. So you want to go higher like that and then come lower. So that is something that really helps build that chest voice. And the next thing I want you to do is something called lip rolls. So you'll put your fingers here and then you can also do this while making a sound, which is sirening. Now this might look very stupid, right? But it actually works. And when you talk to singers and musicians, you will realize that they also practice these exercises to warm up their voice, because it is actually a very effective thing. So you need to try this. Try it privately, of course, because otherwise you will stop getting friends. So people will judge you there. So try it privately. But before your presentations, I definitely suggest this. So that is very important. These two exercises will help you build that voice. And do it maybe for 5 minutes or 10 minutes every day. Really great thing. The next thing you want to do, you want to introduce ginger to your diet. Ginger is really good for the voice. So ginger, then tulsi, those are really great things. A lot of public speaking coaches won't tell you that. But what you eat also really plays a role in how you speak. So that is something you can introduce. And lastly, stay hydrated. So saying that, I have a water bottle. I have this huge water bottle. A lot of my clients ask me, hey Sumit, why do you drink from this tub over here? The reason for that is you need to stay hydrated. Oh my God, that's so refreshing. Okay. Now, let's understand pacing. So people often forget pacing, especially when they're nervous. Especially when they go to stage, they start speaking very fast and nobody understands what they're saying. Right? Did you understand any of that? Barely. Imagine me speaking for like 20-30 minutes just with that tone. Yeah? So that wouldn't end well. So when it comes to pacing, at least try to give a pause wherever you want to emphasize the word. Now, what are the words you can emphasize? Emphasize the starting of the lines, emphasize ending of the sentence. After that, you can emphasize verbs, then adjectives, nouns, pronouns, and vowels, of course. So those are the things. You can add pauses there. You can add your vocal variation there, and it makes the world of a difference. So try that out. And when it comes to taking pauses, if you observe yourself, a lot of speakers add fillers. They're like, so today I was saying that, So when I'm saying something like that, those are fillers. So instead of those fillers, just replace it with pauses. So today, I just wanted to thank you guys for attending this webinar. And it's a great thing that all of you have come here. So that is somewhere I'm using pauses to break that pacing down. Now, I will tell you another thing. So when we speak little faster, it shows higher energy. But when we are too slow, like if I was to speak like this, then you would fall asleep. So that's why keep it around a 5 or 6 when it comes to your tempo. So don't go too fast also, don't go too slow also, somewhere in middle. And also you can break it. Sometimes you can go a little bit faster, sometimes little bit slower. Whenever you want to emphasize on something, go slightly slower, because that really helps drive that point. So what we learned about in this slide was how to find your voice, how to build your voice with certain exercises, and pacing your voice. So when I say it that way, it really emphasizes my point. Okay, let's move on. So now let's come to fluency. So how many of you have seen this movie, English Winglish? It's one of my most favorite, most iconic Sridevi movies, where there's this woman, she barely can speak in English, and she has to go to the US for a marriage. And that's where her whole life changes, because now she has to pick up on these languages and she has to grasp it all of a sudden. And it's a nightmare for her. So she joins these English classes, and it's a really good movie. I don't want to spoil too much. I know I have a big mouth, I keep yapping, but I don't want to spoil too much. You have to check out this movie. Okay, so how do we improve our fluency quickly? So there are a few things that you can do. If you want to improve your fluency, most people focus on reading, and reading almost never helps. The reason for that is because there is no feedback at all. You keep reading, and maybe if you can't pronounce a word, you just move on. If you don't know the meaning of a word, you move on. So that's what happens, and that's why your brain never fully registers the information. So the things that actually help are listening, then speaking, and writing. So if you combine these three, then you can actually make it more effective, and you can improve your fluency very quickly. In around 6 months, you will be able to improve your fluency. So how do we do that? Now there are certain exercises for this. So if you had to break down these exercises, so the first exercise would be that you would dive into something called ChatGPT. How many of you have heard of ChatGPT? I mean, of course, everyone has heard of ChatGPT, right? So let me just quickly share my screen. So in ChatGPT, you will ask it to generate a random paragraph. Generate a paragraph on, let's say, sports. So it's beautifully generating this paragraph. We have a huge paragraph. Now what I want you to do is I want you to first read this paragraph, and I want you to summarize it only in maybe 3 lines or 4 lines max. So what you're doing essentially is you're forcing your brain to compress all these details. And when you're compressing something, you automatically take all this information and really put it in a flow, put it in a structure. So once you try this, at least try it maybe 2-3 times a week, then you really understand the art of summarization. And summarization really builds your speaking, your reading, and your writing ability. So I want you to summarize it in 3 lines and write it down in your notebook. So once you generate a paragraph, do that. The second thing you can do is go to any TED Talk, and I want you to see the first 30 seconds of that TED Talk. After you see 30 seconds, hit pause, summarize what the speaker said, and then play, again watch 30 seconds, again summarize. So this constant feedback loop helps you first pick up on sentence structure and grammar. That is one thing it helps you with. The second thing it does is it helps you really understand where to use which sentence, where to really use that grammar. So because you're summarizing, you're vocally summarizing it, it also forces you to speak. So you have to listen carefully, and you also have to speak. And in the ChatGPT exercise, you focus on the writing. So that is something you can do. Then when it comes to newspapers, you don't have to read the entire thing. Just read maybe 2 or 3 titles. And that's how you can improve your vocabulary much quicker, because the titles usually contain the vocab words. So that is something that helps. And if you want to build your basic grammar, instead of directly starting with movies, you can start with cartoons. Now 2 cartoons that I really recommend are Bluey and We Bare Bears. So you can note it down. Bluey, Bluey, and We Bare Bears. So those are 2 things that I really recommend to get started. After that, one more thing you can do is you can journal every evening, or if not every evening, once in 3 days. Try to summarize what happened in those 3 days. And when you start forcing yourself to do these summaries, when you start listening more, when you start speaking more, that is when change happens. When you go to the ChatGPT app, there is also a speaking section. So you can just click that button over there. This is only available on the app, by the way. It's not on the web version. So on the app, there is a speaking section. So you can click that button and you can really talk to ChatGPT. Let me give you like a quick demo. One second. Okay. So the demo is here. So I have my phone. I've opened the ChatGPT app. It is this button. You see this white button? So when I click this, hey ChatGPT, how are you?
Hey Sumit, I'm doing great. How about you?
I'm also doing great. I actually want to improve my grammar. So can you have a conversation with me?
Of course, I'd be happy to help. What specific areas of grammar would you like to focus on?
Okay. So now you even have someone to speak to. A lot of people, when it comes to fluency, they say that Sumit, I don't have the right environment. So how am I supposed to do this, right? So this is something that helps them out as well. So now let's just break down the weekly schedule of how you're going to do this. Because without a schedule, without a structure, this is completely useless. So this is the 5-day weekly schedule. So all you have to do is take out 60 minutes. You need to take out 60 minutes from your day to work on this. So in this 60 minutes, here is what you're going to do. First, you will practice your conversation with ChatGPT, which is day 1. So you can spend 5 minutes conversing with it. After that, really write the summary of that in 4 to 5 sentences, whatever conversation you had. So this is just day 1. It focuses on your speaking ability, listening ability, and retention of information. After that, it shouldn't take you more than 10 to 12 minutes. This is on the higher end. So this is how much it should take. After that, you go with learning with cartoons. So maybe watch one episode of the cartoons I recommended, which is Bluey and We Bare Bears. And these are fun episodes. It's not like boring that, oh, why am I doing this? No, it's actually genuinely interesting to watch these episodes. So I watch it in my spare time as well. So this is something that will help you understand the tone of voice as well as the grammar use. So pay attention to that. Because in English, different tones suggest different things. So when you have to ask a question, you end with a higher tone. So what is your name? So when I'm saying name, my name is higher. But when I'm making a statement like this is a webinar, so webinar is in a lower pitch because I'm making a statement. So things like these, along with expressions, is something you should observe. Then again, write a summary of the episode in 3 to 4 lines. After that, you can move on to day 3. So in day 3, what you can do is slow reading. And after slow reading for 5 to 7 minutes, in this slow reading, I want you to focus on your mouth movements. Because without your mouth movements, you won't really be able to get there. And sometimes people pronounce things completely incorrectly. So what you have to do is focus on the mouth movements. So suppose if I was to give you an example, spend 5 to 7 minutes reading aloud from a newspaper or a book. So over here, I'm focusing on that mouth movement instead of focusing on reading quickly, right? So that is something you should do. It should take 5 to 7 minutes. It doesn't matter the amount you read, but how accurately you form those sounds, how accurately you form those movements. Then after that, pick 3 words that you can learn. From the newspaper only, you can increase your vocabulary, which is great. And you can do the TEDx summary. So this is something you should do. And lastly, you can reflect on day 1 and day 2. Really review those summaries and upload to ChatGPT and ask if my sentences are correct, if my grammar is correct. ChatGPT can also give you a lot of feedback. So that is something you can focus on. After that is real life conversation practice. So maybe try to talk in English with a coworker, with a friend, or on a Discord voice chat. Because the world has a lot to offer. And once you crack the English language, you can actually focus on clarity, you can focus on public speaking. Because public speaking and the English language are completely different things. A lot of people get confused. They think that I teach English, but that's not what I do. I teach public speaking and confident communication. So that is something you can do. So over here you will learn vocabulary, grammar, pronunciation, and understand the mistakes you were making. Those are the things that you get out of this. And lastly, you can reflect on areas for improvement on day 5. So totally this should not take you more than an hour a week or max to max 1.5 hours. So it's simple yet very effective. But the key is again consistency. Okay, let's move on. Now comes body language. Who is the best person at body language? There are two people that I really admire their body language. There's of course Mr. Bean and there is Charlie Chaplin. Because these people, without even saying a word, just with their expressions, with their actions, they're able to make us laugh, which is very hard to do. So how do we use body language? So first thing is, we have to focus on minute details. Now, what are these minute details? We have to focus on our eye contact with the audience. If I'm looking here and I'm speaking, then you automatically know that something is off, right? So eye contact is very necessary to connect with the audience. Then we focus on our hand gestures. A good thing to do is take your palms and try to face it towards the audience. If I speak like this, then it means that I'm hiding something. Rather, keep it open. Speak like this, somewhere around, say, a 45-degree angle. That really works well. It works in your favor. That makes you look much more friendly. Then you should also look at your arms. Are you fidgeting? Are you doing this? A lot of people do this, where they're just fidgeting. A lot of people speak like this. Okay, so today I'm going to talk about, but don't have your arms folded. That shows that you're not confident. In the animal kingdom, whenever we see a predator, they're more spread out. When you see a lion who's about to hunt or a tiger who's about to hunt, they spread out their body to look much more scary. Same goes with humans. You need to spread out your body, take more space. Wherever it's appropriate, try to take more space in the room. It will really help people perceive that you're confident. Now, as a kid, I was not at all confident, okay? But when it came to college, that's where I learned a lot of these skills. And I remembered that we had this inauguration for our college. And they asked one student to come up on stage and light the candle. And I went. I was like, fine, let's go and let's do this. So I went for that. And once I went there, people's perception was just so quick to form. People thought I was this confident individual who just went. Some people thought I was invited on stage. There must be something special about him. But all it took was just going there and lighting that candle. That's it. So body language is 90% of your communication. Communication is not only this. Communication is this. It's your movement, it's your expressions. All of these together makes communication. So that is very important. So master body language, master communication. Then let's understand reading body language. So there are a few tricks you can do. Firstly, you want to observe their toes. Are their toes pointing towards you while you're speaking? Now, this is in a physical setting, obviously. In a digital setting, you can't know what I'm doing. So in a physical setting, are their feet pointing towards you while you're speaking? So if they are pointing towards you, that means great. They're listening to you, they're paying attention. If they're not pointing towards you, then maybe something is missing. Maybe they're distracted. Then eye contact. Some people get nervous, so they don't maintain eye contact. That's completely okay. While approaching someone new, first observe how much eye contact are they maintaining. Is it like maybe in the 60 to 90% range, or is it 30 to 40%? All I want you to do is match that. Because if you keep staring at them and they do only 30 to 40% eye contact, then they're like, oh my God, this guy is weird. I am getting out of here. I am uncomfortable. They start to feel uncomfortable. So that is where observe and match. This is called mirroring. Another thing you can do when you really want to convince someone about something. Suppose I'm talking to my boss and I'm like, okay, I really need this promotion. Just copy their gestures. If they're maybe sitting like this, sit like this. If they are looking at you a certain way, or if their facial expression is a certain way, you can copy it subtly. Don't exactly copy it, but have some subtlety to it. After that, one more thing you should observe is their eyebrows. When you're speaking to someone, are their eyebrows tense or are they relaxed? If they're tense, that means that they are either confused or they do not agree with you. If they're relaxed, then they might agree with you. One more thing to check if someone is agreeing with you is their head movement. Are they frequently nodding? If I want someone to speak, I would nod 3 times. So that really increases the amount of conversation people have in general. These are very small things. Then there is touch. So if you want to make a deeper connection, all you need is to touch someone for 1/4 of a second. Now, by touch, I do not mean harass them. I just mean maybe like a gentle pat on the back or a friendly elbow touch. So it has to be platonic. Be careful with this, and don't have this touch for too long. All you need is 0.4 seconds. That's it. So that is something that drives that connection. And lastly, there is the smile. A smile can make the biggest difference. But if you're smiling and your smile is fake, people can immediately identify. So the only thing that makes the difference between a real smile and a fake smile is your eyes. So when you're smiling, if only my face is engaged and my eyes are not engaged in the smile, that means it's a fake smile. Look, I look so weird. I look like I'm possessed. But if my eyes are engaged, like here, you'll see wrinkles over here in the eyes. That means it's a real smile. And how do you maintain a real smile? Like, obviously, you can't be happy all the time, right? So, a little trick I use is I say the word money. When I say money, automatically those muscles move and my smile looks much more real. So, a warm smile sometimes is all it takes. Then you should obviously know the difference between warm body language and authoritative body language. Sometimes, when you want to address your team, you want to look like this confident leader. You can't just be like, okay, I will have very warm body language, I'll be very friendly. No, you need certain level of authority for people to listen to you. So that's why maybe you have to stand straight. You have to really speak with your chest voice. You have to have expression, a stoic face. You have to have very serious expressions. So that is something that builds that authority. But if you do the same thing in a team meeting where you want people to contribute their ideas, then it'll never work. You have to be more friendly there. Maybe a smile, and maybe you're more relaxed with your body. It's not stiff and your arms are open, and maybe that touch is maintained. So yeah, those are the things that help you. So know the difference between where to use warm body language, where to use authoritative body language. And then it's just all about practicing it. Now, to a lot of people, hand gestures don't come naturally. When they speak, we're just used to speaking like this. But when we speak like this, it makes us look much more energetic. Just practice it. And all the things I told, observe them. Learn from observation. That is something that will help you out a lot. So that's about body language. Now let's move on. Now this is my absolute favorite part, which is engaging the audience with storytelling. Because if you want to engage the audience, a lot of people start their presentation like this. Good morning, today I'm going to speak about this topic, and the audience has already fallen asleep. It's completely useless. Now, why do I have a picture of Trump over here? The reason for this is when you look at all the presidential candidates and their speeches, their presentations, you will see that Trump's speeches are automatically the most entertaining. And just because he's able to trigger some emotion out of the public, that is the reason why people voted for him. They didn't vote for him because he's a good president or because he's going to bring change. They only voted because he was able to make them feel something, whereas the other candidates were only able to make the voters fall asleep, which is the worst way. Any politician you look, they will try to trigger some kind of emotion because they know how to engage the audience. So let's learn that as well. So if you want to engage the audience, there is firstly your hooks. We'll get to questions later. So we'll first finish this. After the presentation is over, we'll get to questions. Okay, Miraya? Okay. So there are two things. So first there is hooks, then there is storytelling. So when it comes to hooks, the first 30 seconds are very important, right? Because I told you that the human attention span is less than a goldfish. So you have to really grab that attention from them. Presentations, public speaking is all about attention grabbing. So how do you do that? You can either do something called a question hook, where you ask them a thought-provoking question. Don't ask them a generic question where the answer is only yes or no. And if in case you don't have anything else to do, if you don't get an appropriate question, just follow it up with a why. So suppose I say, do you like pizza? Some people will say yes, some people will say no. Then why? So then that kind of gets them thinking, why do I not like pizza? Maybe I don't like eating some fatty foods, or maybe it's unhealthy for me, or whatever. So that is something you can do. The second thing, which is my favorite kind of hook, is engagement hook. Now, suppose I was talking about social media. I wouldn't start by saying, today I'm going to talk about social media. No, I'm going to start like this. Guys, can you just all raise your phones? Yeah? Can you just put your phones over here? Now I want you to open Instagram and I want you to go to the settings and each of you just shout out how long you were active on Instagram. Now this automatically becomes more interesting because now people have something to do. They're not just like, okay, I'm here to listen to him. No, he has given me a task. I have to complete this. And then you'll get a lot of interesting answers and you get to prove your point also. Now, if I want to talk about the side effects of social media, if people have a lot of time they're spending there, what if I tell them that imagine you take all this time that you've spent on social media and worked on just one skill? You would be probably as good as these professionals. You could become a celebrity just by taking this time and diverting it somewhere else. This is just an example, but this is how engagement hooks work. You also have controversial statement hooks. So, especially on YouTube shorts or reels, people start with something controversial, a bold statement that stops you from scrolling. Just like that, with presentations, also, you can do that. Now, when Trump says, make America great again, that is something a little bit controversial because some people think that America is already great, right? So, why is he saying that? So, that is something that stops them. You can find a lot of examples on these, especially on social media. Okay, that is about hooks. Now, let's dive into storytelling. Why do you think storytelling is important, guys? The reason storytelling is important is not because that I need to tell a story because that's all I know. And no, a story is important because it's memorable. Now, when I told you about me lighting the candle in my college and everyone thinking I'm confident, that'll probably stick with a lot of you people. You'll be like, okay, that is how he did it. Maybe I can also do this. But all the technical stuff I said, maybe you'll remember it for a week. And those of you who were taking notes, maybe even longer. But you might forget it at some point. But a story can stick for life. I want you to reflect on your own life and think about some of the stories you have heard and you really liked. You really liked listening to them. And even now you can remember the exact details. So that is very important. Stories generate emotion and connection. Now you must be wondering, I'm not a storyteller, Sumit. How can I do this? Well, that's the secret. Everybody is a storyteller with the right framework. So what is the framework for storytelling? It's quite simple. You have a character. It can be any character, it can be multiple characters. They face, or he or she faces, a problem that is there. Then there is a journey of that character. Then there is a learning and there is an emotion. So there are only a few emotions that you have to work with in combination. So the most popular emotions are love, there's nostalgia, there's jealousy, hatred, anger, sadness, joy. So if you combine those emotions, that's what makes a great story. If you don't know what these emotions are, you can just Google Inside Out and you will find a whole list of emotions to work with. It's very easy. So take these emotions, take whatever topic you're talking about, and put your story in this framework. Don't talk about weird stories like frogs and princesses. No, talk about your own life. That is what is relatable, a personal story, not something random like that. That is a big mistake a lot of people make. They start talking about weird fairy tales. Nobody cares about fairy tales. They care about the speaker. They care about the speaker's experiences. So what I do is whenever something interesting happens in my life, I go to Google Notes, I note down a small summary of that story, and I note down the emotion next to it. So suppose I had to speak on team management, then I would get to a story. So a very interesting story that comes to my mind when I think of team management is that once I had gone, especially I think it was November. In November, I had gone for a trek in Himachal. I had gone to this place called Triand. It was my first ever trek, And I was feeling very confident. I thought that, oh, it's just 7 kilometers, I'll climb it. I walk a lot, so it should be fine. But when I actually did that trek, it was a nightmare. But I finally made it to the peak. I made it to the peak. Unfortunately, my uncle who had accompanied me could not make it all the way. And that's why I was alone. So I was around 2,500 meters high. There was nothing there. There was just grass, maybe other people trekking, and there were a few tents. That is all that was there. And I sit there, I take the fresh air, I look at the view, and when it's time to go, suddenly what happens is I get cramps on both my thighs at the same time, and I just fall to the ground. Luckily, I'd made a few friends over there. That I only knew a few Germans, and after that, what happened was when I got those cramps, they really helped me out. One of them was a medic, and he called some people around, and luckily there was a physician. And then I didn't know how to come down. They told me that, hey, I think you have to stay here overnight. But I was all alone. My uncle was down and he didn't even know that all this had happened because there was no reception in the phone, nothing was there. So after that, I had to decide, what do I do? Should I stay here? It's scary. The room was like horrible. There was no electricity, obviously. So I stayed there for maybe 2 hours and the Germans went back. Then I made friends with some locals over there who had also come for a trek. Then what happened was I told those locals, hey, I really need to go down. Can you help me? And they said that it's 7 kilometers, but yeah, we should help you. We can help you. And then our journey started. It hurt a lot for the first 40 minutes. And there was this guy, Ayush. He held my hand through the entire way, 7 kilometers, 3 hours. This stranger I had just met held my hand, and all of them really cared for me. They gave me water. They really helped me out. And finally, after 3 hours of pain, I made it out. And that's why teamwork is important. Because when you're alone, you can only do so much. And if something goes wrong, you're stuck there. But when you have a team, you have people to guide you, you have people to help you. So that is a personal story of mine that I shared. So over here, I had a character, which was me and the people I met along the way. Then I had a problem that I had cramps, horrible cramps on both my legs. Then my journey, how I really went down that hill, how I really went down on that trek. After that, I also had learning. So that was also there. I learned that teamwork is very important. And emotions of pain, there was sadness, there was also that suspense that, oh my God, what do I do next? So all of these things really helped me out. So that is the secret to storytelling. After that, there is something called the 20% rule. So what is the 20% rule? The 20% rule is that your audience should interact with you at least 20% of the times. Whenever you're presenting, keep at least 20% for the audience interaction. Don't just keep speaking and speaking. Unfortunately, this is a webinar, so I can't interact with my audience much. But when it comes to real life presentations, keep that there. Because the more you interact with them, the more connected they feel. So that is all about engaging the audience.